In this video, we're going to install Microsoft Windows. Go ahead and power on your computer if you're following along and insert the Microsoft Windows CD. In my case, I'm not using a real computer, so I'll use the VirtualBox virtualization software. If you need to know how to use this, go back to the Virtualization 101 software video. I'm going to click Windows XP. It's a virtual machine I created before, and click Start. And it should go ahead and boot up the CD, the installation CD. And we saw a flash on the screen where it says Setup is inspecting your hardware. Windows Setup, this is a typical Windows setup. Press F2 to run automated system recovery. This is in case you're trying to repair. The same CD for installation is used for repairing Windows. Setup is loading files and it's listing the files here. This is a typical install of Windows XP, which is very similar to Vista. Basically, you insert the CD-ROM after the computer is powered on, and in some cases you may need to restart the computer. Please note that it will erase all data on your system, so make sure you're using an old hard drive, old PC, or a new one with a new hard drive, or in my case, virtualization software that's pretending to be a computer. And Setup is loading files, and this is typically what happens. And in the end of the installation, it might ask for a few pieces of information, such as your time zone, where you live, license agreements, and so on. And usually, typically with Microsoft operating systems, you may need to reboot at least one time before the system is ready to use. And depending on how you set up the system, you may need to type in a username and password. And you see Setup is loading files. These are all the different drivers or types of software that is used, low-level software as they're called, to control the hardware of the system. In newer versions of Windows, such as Vista, you may not see this at all. It would be a prettier GUI here, graphical user interface, with a listing of stages, highlighted stages on the left-hand side. In a future video, we might see that. But if you're interested in computers and how it works, this is actually a very good installation because you get to see not exactly what's going on as though you were loading a Unix system, but still it keeps you informed, relatively well informed of what it's doing. Notice there is no more drivers loading, so it's starting up and it's formatting the hard drive. So what we have happening here is all the data that's previously on the drive is being erased. In the standard installation, you would be asked to what method of formatting, or if you're sure, and so on. We're trying to speed things up here because of our 10-minute limit for videos posted on YouTube. And now Setup is copying the files. Please wait while Setup copies files to the Windows installation folders. And it tells you the exact files that are being copied. This is of limited use at this point. We just want to get a typical idea. If you notice these flashing green lights on the CD-ROM and the hard drive, the single disk represents the CD-ROM. This represents the hard drive. This is how disk access is illustrated on the virtual machine, but on your actual PC, that's where you're doing the install, you would see real lights on the front of the PC flashing as this copying is taking place. Now setup is 47%. I'm going to go ahead and pause this so we could come back and conserve some of the time to get in a few extra words coming towards the end of the installation. Now I skipped quite a few steps that was not important to save time. And here we have Windows rebooting after the initial install and starting up into the graphical environment. And this is what I was talking about before, listing of the stages. All these have been completed already. It's now installing Windows. All the files have been copied to the hard drive. And it says it'll complete in 39 minutes. It gives you some tidbits about Windows along with this sort of progress bar that tells you, the process has not died, along with the flashing lights of the CD-ROM and hard drive. And so again, I will pause the video while the installation continues. For those of you who haven't seen a Windows install before, or would like to see it but don't have the hardware or the means to do it, this should give you a good idea of what's involved and how straightforward it is. We see some dialog boxes opening, extracting files. It's asking for some user input. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. Let it continue. As we see, 9 minutes left, and it's saving the current settings, and we're approaching the end of the installation. We see it's on the stage of finalizing the installation with 4 minutes left, and most likely it will be followed by another reboot. We're about to a second reboot or restart of the computer system. The installation CD is still in there. If we wanted to reinstall, we would hit any key, it says. We really should remove that CD now. And here we go, our brand new Windows XP Professional installation has completed. The startup sequence is almost complete, which is referred to as booting or rebooting if you're starting from scratch. If you're starting from running to not running and then back up. And that's it for this video. We've successfully loaded the Microsoft Windows XP operating system to a brand new machine.